Hi there, Kris from Stone Age Gamer here, and welcome back to Stone Age Gaming. Now, at the day that I'm recording this, we are a mere 2 weeks away from the launch of the Switch 2, and I've been running through my history with getting Nintendo consoles and the stories behind how I got them. It's kind of a fun run-up to the wonderful, exciting launch of the Switch 2, because I'm a lunatic for this kind of stuff, and I think these kind of stories are really fun to tell, and everybody that's been sounding off in the comments in the previous videos giving me their stories have been super fun to listen to, so I'm hoping to get some more. But anyways, here is the next chapter in my history with Nintendo consoles. Enjoy.
Nintendo may have cracked open the door to Crazy Town a little with the launch of the Nintendo DS, but as the world would soon learn, they were about to rip that door right off the hinges and let the insanity truly flow with their next home console. They codenamed their GameCube successor Revolution, and proudly proclaimed that they were going to change video games forever. Normally that kind of hyperbole is just that, hyperbole. Nobody actually expected the very gaming landscape to be intrinsically altered by a single product. But with Nintendo's DS beating the ever-loving tar out of Sony's PSP contrary to every conceivable logic, anything is possible, especially when it came to the big N. We soon found out they weren't kidding, and they were going to do it with a thing called Wii. It wasn't about new powerful hardware, it was about the way people interacted with their games. It was a bold move, but Nintendo clearly had their ducks in a row because they approached it with confidence. When Nintendo finally showed off their revolutionary new controller, they did it like this, without a single shot of an actual video game. I've never seen a brand new concept communicated so perfectly, and I was immediately and completely sold. Then they announced that name, Wii. I can't say I was ever truly on board with this one. I understood the logic they were going for. They wanted to invent a new sort of nonsense word. They cited Google and iPod as words nobody would have taken seriously 20 years ago, but now they were marketing megaton bombs. So sure, I get it. Wii, though? Here in North America, that word already had plenty of connotations, no matter how you spelled it. Still, those motion controls looked amazing, and I could not wait to get my hands on them. Then came the talk of the system's relative power, and the industry and players alike began letting their concerns be known. It turned out that the Wii wasn't going to be much more powerful than the GameCube, and nowhere near as capable as the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. However, that lack of true next-generation power turned out to also be one of the Wii's biggest strengths. Where photorealistic graphics drove the competition's biggest releases, anyone who wanted to develop for the Wii and try to take advantage of its unbelievable install base were forced to get creative. And that resulted in some crazy, awesome, and unique games. This time around, I was more ready than I ever had been for a Nintendo console launch. I was a store manager of the Union City Game Crazy, and I had my system, games, and accessories all paid off. In fact, I had the Wii's launch day set up like a well-oiled machine. So I decided that since my store, unfortunately, wasn't allowed to do a midnight launch of our own, I was going to head over to Times Square and go see Nintendo's crazy midnight launch party at Toys R Us with a couple of my friends and staff members. This was the scene outside of Toys R Us on launch night. Off to the right was where the stage was. It was great because I didn't have to wait in any lines. I wasn't there to buy anything. I had it all set back for me at my store already. I just walked around and took it all in, and boy was it a spectacle. In the area next to the store, they had this huge stage set up with a DJ blasting some crazy music, and people were giving out cool Wii hats and gloves to the crowd. Everyone there was beyond stoked to finally get their hands on what they thought was the future of gaming. The new Zelda game didn't hurt either. Reggie himself took the stage a few minutes before he went inside to personally ring up the first official sale, and he gave a cool speech about how awesome everything was. Honestly, it was an absolute blast to be there and see all the hubbub. After the party was over and people started buying their Wii consoles, my friends and I hopped the train back home where I got myself a good night's sleep, went into work the next morning, and sold the giant stack of Wiis that were behind my counter. The launch itself went silky smooth. I didn't have any issues besides a ton of people coming in to buy systems we didn't have. Not that we didn't get plenty of consoles, but in case you somehow don't remember, the Wii was a freaking phenomenon. Everyone had to have one, and not just Nintendo fans. No, Nintendo's second and even crazier than the DS attempt to change the way people play games and make them more accessible for absolutely everyone turned into a sensation that permeated popular culture in a way that video games hadn't in a very long time. And while that may have turned into frustration for a lot of people for months and months to come, it was just an incredibly fun thing to be around for. I lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment by myself when the Wii launched, and I will never forget the feeling of taking it home after my shift, hooking it all up, and seeing the user interface in action. It was on my Sony Trinitron CRT, the one I still have. The lights were low and the whole room was glowing with the bright white channels menu accompanied by that wonderful startup sound and subsequent background noise. It was so very surreal. Nintendo really never had much of a UI in their consoles before, so for as simple as the Wii's menu was, it felt profoundly futuristic. I have a weird nostalgic connection to the very specific way the console would glow when you got a message. That blue light was awesome. And whenever I see it now, it teleports me right back to that first time I saw it in action on launch night. I stayed up all night launching the news channel and spinning the globe on the weather channel, poking around the Wii Shop channel and buying Super Mario Bros., and of course, creating my very own Mii. What a night. But I was immensely tickled by the fact that Nintendo had managed to look the forward progression of technology straight in the face and say, "No, we're going in a different direction," and succeeded so wildly with their own vision. The Wii was the true start of Nintendo's quote-unquote gimmick problem that plagued their next couple of consoles, but there's no question that the Wii was the right system at the right time. And you know what? For all those silly motion-controlled piles of shovelware, the Wii saw some truly fantastic traditional games. We saw new IP like No More Heroes and The Last Story and Xenoblade Chronicles, as well as extraordinary new entries in classic franchises like Donkey Kong Country, Punch-Out!, Excitebike, and even A Boy and His Blob. And remember when Nintendo sold a bajillion copies of New Super Mario Bros. Wii, a brand new 2D Mario game on a home console, and started a trend of big-budget 2D platformers finding their way back into people's TV screens? Because I do, and that made me very happy. And how about the Virtual Console? Sure, it wasn't perfect, but I spent over $1,000, no, I am not exaggerating, on that service during the Wii's life cycle. And thanks to that service, I played some great games I never had the chance to play when they first came out. I got to experience the Turrican series on both Super NES and Genesis, play through Castlevania Rondo of Blood for the Turbo CD, and obsess over the sublime Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap for Sega Master System. I have said it before and I'll say it again, anybody who says there were no good games on the Wii simply wasn't looking. So why do I love my Nintendo Wii? There are a ton of reasons to love that thing, but above all else, I love it because it got my wife to play video games with me. You've heard Nintendo talk about this scenario a ton of times, but I watched it play out firsthand and I still can't believe the genius of it. It started with Wii Sports Bowling, which was the gateway drug Nintendo had cleverly gotten into the hands of people all over the world. Then, Mario Kart Wii with its Wii wheel and motion controls happened, and it was so intuitive that my wife immediately wanted to give it a try. Then she got really good with it. And then she tried it with traditional controls, and she's never looked back. Now she's a Mario Kart Pro. Not literally, but she's pretty darn good, and it's all because Nintendo lowered the barrier of entry. Not only that, but Mario Kart gave her the courage to try other things. She did pretty well with Elebits, and I still can't believe I actually came home from work one day to find her playing Super Mario Galaxy on her own with no prompting from me. Probably the most impressive feat I've ever seen her accomplish, though, is that she has beaten Runner 2 on Wii U 100% on all difficulties. She's never going to be a gaming nutjob like me. It just doesn't click with her the same way, but certain games really do work for her, and now that she knows that, she's willing to give more stuff a try. We beat Pikmin 3 together. We beat Luigi's Mansion 3 together, and that's all because Nintendo's Wii philosophy actually worked. It may have wound up being a mixed bag in the end, but I will always be grateful to Nintendo for creating that environment for her. In 2009, James Cameron unleashed his movie Avatar onto the world, and with it came a newfound global fascination with 3D. In retrospect, both things were pretty dumb, but Avatar and 3D were the buzzwords of the time. Trouble was, 3D never really worked for me, except for very self-contained things like the Viewmaster or the Virtual Boy. I just don't see it very well, especially when I'm sitting in a movie theater and have to put glasses on over my glasses. So when Nintendo announced the 3DS, I was pretty skeptical. When I heard that the 3D didn't require glasses, I thought to myself, wait, that can't be right. It was, though. Nintendo had managed to pull off a consumer-ready device with glasses-free 3D, which I didn't even know was a thing, and it absolutely dazzled everyone who saw it. It was a gimmick, sure, but it was a great one that enticed people to pick up and try their newest handheld. The successor to the immensely popular Nintendo DS was finally here, and it brought with it an analog pad, vastly superior graphics, cool new modes of communication, and a sleek design. There were two big problems, though. First, there were almost no games for the thing. Second, it cost $250. Now, this may seem silly here in the year of our Lord 2025 when everything is stupid expensive and the Switch 2 is going to cost $450, but at the time of that price announcement, Nintendo's latest handheld cost more than its home console. As you may recall, most folks weren't having it. It sold okay at first, but it quickly hit a brick wall. That 3D effect was pretty darn cool, but sitting next to the other consoles on the market at that price didn't do it any favors. Turns out that fancy 3D effect was the start of a trend for Nintendo too, as tying themselves to an expensive technology resulting in long-term detriment of their console happened again soon after, but we'll talk about the Wii U another time. They eventually fixed both the price and game issues, but in the beginning, at that price with that game catalog and my life circumstances being the way they were, I was forced to make a tough decision. After a lot of consideration, I decided that this was going to be the first Nintendo system released during my adult life that I wouldn't get at launch. Honestly, their handhelds rarely held the same luster for me as their home consoles did anyway. I would get it eventually, but the money, it just wasn't there. And with no games at launch that I absolutely needed to play, I was prepared to live with my decision. Then the strangest thing happened. Launch day came, and I wound up with a 3DS of my very own. And it came from a very unexpected source. My wife and I had run into some bad luck for a while. Life was just smacking us around, particularly in the realm of finances. I had been unemployed for a while, and I eventually took what I had planned on being a temporary position at a local comic book store. As far as comic book stores go, this place was a paradise. Seriously, it was meticulously organized and positively brimming with back issues. They respected their product in a way that I had never seen a comic book store do before, and I thought it would be a fun job. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but that job turned out to be one of the most challenging experiences of my entire life. There were some incredible positives and some equally terrible negatives. I learned a ton about running a business, how to handle an online presence, and I met some unforgettable people, two of which were the owners of the store. To say that they were some of the most complicated personalities I have ever interacted with would be an understatement. I have never before or since met people who exhibited positive and negative extremes to the extent that they did. They were very proud people, sometimes to a fault, but no matter what, they always seemed to want to do right by me, and they succeeded at that many times over. They gave me a job when nobody else would. They trusted me with things that they didn't normally trust anyone else with. They gave me responsibility that directly affected their business and their livelihood. I have more than a few overwhelmingly negative memories about that experience of working there, but they are mostly balanced out by some truly great stuff, not the least of which includes a remarkable feat of generosity on their parts. As a Nintendo nut, I wouldn't shut up about how cool I thought the 3DS was. When I started talking about how I wasn't going to be able to get a 3DS at launch though, they decided to go ahead and get one for me without my knowledge. On launch day, I worked, and before I went home, they kept me behind to talk to me for a moment. They busted out a gift bag, and inside was a 3DS and Ocarina of Time 3D. They told me it was their way of saying thank you for all that I did around the place. It wasn't a birthday or a Christmas present, it was just an incredible act of kindness for no other reason than to make me happy and feel appreciated. I don't know if they knew how much that meant to me, but I did my very best to express that to them at the time and in the months that followed. For good or ill, they were certainly the most memorable bosses I have ever had, and were it not for that job and the people I met there, Geekade and the Stone Age Gamer podcast wouldn't exist. My feelings about that time in my life are complicated indeed, but it was one of the most pivotal periods I've ever lived through, and while it's easier to remember the bad stuff, I make sure to do my part to remember the good as well, and the good was pretty darn good. I have since played the crap out of my 3DS and eventual 3DS XL. I never did get around to getting myself a new 3DS, but I'll live. But man, there were so many great games. A fantastic portable version of Super Street Fighter 4, boatloads of indie games like Mutant Mudds and Cave Story, there was a new Pilot Wings, a new Animal Crossing, a spectacular remake of Metroid 2, and for the love of Palutena, an actual, real, tangible Kid Icarus sequel! I downloaded so many games on that thing, and I still keep it next to my bed to this day. I can't remember the last time I turned on the 3D slider for more than a few seconds, but underneath that silly gimmick, there is a complete powerhouse of a gaming machine with some of the best titles on any console around. So why do I love my Nintendo 3DS? 2 words: Street Pass. I've had a lot of fun with the 3DS over the years, but the one thing that sticks out above all else is the incredible social nature of that thing. In case you don't know what Street Pass is, basically 3DS consoles communicated with one another wirelessly whenever they came within a certain range of each other. No actual personal contact was necessary. You just keep your 3DS in your pocket when you go out into the world, and when you get home, you see a green light at the top. Everyone else who also had a 3DS with them will have their Mii show up on your system, and you'll get a little puzzle piece or something from them. It was simple, addictive, and it encouraged people to take their 3DSs with them wherever they went. And for a time, they were everywhere. I always had mine on me at work. I would always finish each day with a couple of new puzzle pieces or adventures for Find Me. They eventually added more mini games that you could buy for street passing and stuff. But it was the puzzle pieces that had me going the longest. I seriously cannot believe that the Switch never got any sort of similar functionality. But maybe we'll see something in the future. It was a remarkable social experiment, and I think it was a complete success. It certainly was fun.
All right, well, there you have it. That's the story of my Wii and 3DS, and man, the Wii in particular. When I worked at Game Crazy in Union City, I don't know if you've ever seen a Game Crazy. They don't exist anymore. They were carved out of Hollywood Videos, and they were carved out with chain link fence. Like, they didn't put up new walls. They just put fencing inside, which looked really cool, but it made merchandising really hard because you had to like use zip ties to get peg hooks onto the walls. It was weird, but it was really cool. I really loved working for that company. That was a really fun job. And when my staff and I went out to Times Square and to Toys R Us, which also doesn't exist anymore outside of Macy's, but whatever. It was such a fun time. The whole Wii experience was just massively fun, and it was I have mixed feelings on the way that system's generation played out, but the system itself, that at the launch, at that day when I took it home and I was sitting in my little loft bed in this tiny one-bedroom apartment, hearing all the sounds of like the news channel starting up and the weather channel starting up and all those fun little things in the Wii that the GameCube would never do, right? That was such a big difference in user interface from GameCube to Wii. It was really wild. And the 3DS too. That comic book store that I worked in was a wild place, and I learned so much. And my bosses there were fascinating people, and I hope I conveyed that well. Like, I'm kind of trying to avoid putting too fine a point on it, just because I don't know. I feel weird about it. But getting the 3DS from them was like, I don't think they understood how much that meant to me. Like, just a general nice thing to just here's a 3DS because I know you wanted it and you don't need it, but you want it. And it was just an extraordinarily kind gesture, and I'm forever grateful to them for that. But anyway, those are the stories for those two systems. We've got two left coming up next week, and then it's going to be Switch 2 time. So yay! Anyways, thank you for watching. If you like what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, subscribe, share, and please keep sharing your stories in the comments of how you got various game systems. That's been my favorite part of this entire experience, is these last two videos. There's a bunch of comments from people that I don't know telling me their stories of how they got game systems, and I just love those stories so much. I love hearing about all that stuff. So any stories you have to share, I love hearing them. I love reading them. Thank you very much for watching, and on behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games.